No one in any business goes to work expecting to die or to suffer a serious injury on the job. Life is just too precious. And despite what some people might say, accidents in the workplace are not inevitable or just plain bad luck. Even here in the forest industry, where workers must somehow reconcile the unpredictability of nature with the imperfection of technology, even here, accidents are rarely the result of bad luck or an act of God. Most often, accidents result from human error.
As far as I was concerned, that there was nothing that I could have done about it. There was no way that I could foresee that it was going to happen.
To Sven Fredriksson, there will never be a logical explanation for why he was hurt on the job. Like his father before him, Sven was an experienced and careful logger, a cautious man who did not take unnecessary risks. Sven was even a member of the camp safety committee. He knew the safety rules, and yet, somehow, he missed seeing a broken limb hung up in the branches high above his head. When that limb shook loose and fell, Sven never saw it coming, never knew what hit him.
It was always my belief that if I abided by all the safety rules and did my work to the best of my ability so that I didn't make any mistakes, and behaved myself, then I wouldn't get hurt. So I didn't ever expect it to happen to me, not to this degree. I thought maybe I'd get the odd cut or something like that. But as far as being paralyzed, that was the last thing on my mind.
The tree limb that crippled Sven Fredriksson has a name. Loggers call it the Widowmaker. It's disturbing to see how often accidents like that happen, how unpredictable the forces of nature really are. Loggers, especially the ones who become tree fallers, are usually well-trained and can pretty much calculate how and where a tree will go down. Before the first cut, they look to see which way it's leaning, which way the wind is blowing, and they try their best to spot widowmakers, limbs, dead treetops, anything that might shake loose and fall. If the faller does everything right, if he follows all the safety procedures, he might be able to do this over and over 1,000 times and never get hurt. But then, the next time, who knows? Hazards on the job can look deceptively harmless. A dead tree is probably one of the most dangerous things in the forest. Although it's nowhere near as big or heavy as the live trees growing around it, this old snag, as the loggers call it, is very likely rotten up the middle. What's worse, it's tangled up with another dead snag next to it. When the chainsaw starts to chew into the trunk, it could split at any time and fall in any direction. This time, the Widowmaker missed its target. Though some accidents are unavoidable, many can be prevented with proper training and adherence to safety rules. Why then don't workers do everything in their power to avoid the unavoidable? Problems at home, problems on the job, a momentary loss of concentration, and it happens again. Well, when I found out that I had such a serious accident, I didn't want to live.
because I just didn't want to exist in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, having been so active all my life. And I'd never be able to get back into the woods or go fly fishing at the lake or go hunting up on the plateaus or climb the top of a mountain just for the heck of it.
For Sven, memories are a painful reminder that his accident took more from him than just his ability to walk.
The worst part of it is losing my wife. It's got to be the worst part. If she had been with me, it would have been much easier. But losing my wife in 1978 was a terrible thing for me. At the time I had my injury and my wife found out how bad I was, I had to sedate her so she couldn't even come up to the hospital to see me. And she couldn't cope with my condition. And she just continually went downhill until she ended up in the hospital with leukemia. She did some drinking at the time too, which she started to, and started drinking quite heavily, and that led partially to it. I guess it was to fortify herself and to get up every day and see me this way. Things changed so much because we did everything together.
Now, he is alone, with time to think. Of what went wrong, of how it could have been prevented, of why it happened to him. For Sven, time ran out in the 12-second countdown. Wolfgang Zimmermann, who lives just across the valley from Sven Fredriksson, was only 20 years old when his life changed forever. Married less than a year, he took a job on a forestry crew, hoping to make enough money to finish school as a landscape architect. The fifth day on the job proved to be the tragic turning point in this young couple's future. Wolfgang was clearing brush beside a logging road when an alder tree split and swung around as it fell. The tree trunk nailed him in the middle of the back. Looking back is not easy for Wolfgang because always there's the memory of an accident that should never have happened.
Week and a half, I was almost completely out. And after that, I guess I was on regular pain relievers every 4 hours for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I guess it was really when the pain died down a little bit, and I was out in the wheelchair, and it became evident to me then that, you know, at that point in time it was just totally hopeless situation. And it was really devastating.
Chainsaws, trees, and human bodies are a dangerous combination at the best of times. Put them together with a lack of experience, a momentary loss of concentration, and you invite disaster. Ten years ago, Wolfgang Zimmermann was a rookie, 5 days on the job, strong, eager, and with hindsight, you might say, dangerously overconfident. Clearing brush beside a logging road, Wolfgang was cutting trees like these to improve visibility for log truck drivers. He made an improper cut. The tree split as it fell, and part of the broken trunk swung around and hit him in the back.
I was really scared that I was going to die because I had really a hard time breathing. And then the fear of what the future is going to be like, knowing that I was paralyzed and that I would end up in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, and what the future would hold in terms of all our hopes and dreams that we had for the future. And it was really scary. And I was just really afraid.
For Wolfgang Zimmermann, the battle to start life over began the day he left hospital for his first outing to a supermarket with his wife Heidi.
We were shopping and driving down the aisles in the wheelchair. I just felt so limited, so incredibly frustrated, because I felt all the people were staring at me. I was just so limited and restricted by the wheelchair. And at that moment, that's when I made up my mind. I was never gonna stay in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I gave up that wheelchair right then, and I left it at the rehab center, and I never took it home with me after that day.
With stubborn determination and the advantages of youth, Wolfgang learned to walk with 2 crutches and the help of long leg braces.
Yeah, this one is comfortable, you know, his room, and there doesn't seem to be any more calcium growth. Like you get so much room in it.
An injured worker never accepts his disability. He adjusts to it. Often even this is too much to bear. The individual remains hostile and bitter, even toward his family, who must try to help him cope with all the ensuing social, sexual, and financial problems. Sometimes one person is injured, but whole families are destroyed. Wolfgang and Heidi's marriage survived. They adjusted and were able to make a home for their children. The road to recovery for Wolfgang was paved with sand, bricks, and lumber. At the time of his accident 10 years ago, this house was only a dream, a wood frame shell on an empty lot in the forest. But with help from his wife, family, and friends, Wolfgang applied the same stubborn determination to building as he did to walking away from the wheelchair.
To a large extent, it was my salvation that we were at that time building this house, and that I wanted to continue building the house, and that I was not going to let this accident stop me from doing that. And if it had not been for the house, and if we had been living in an apartment, I suspect there would not have been the incentive and the drive to want to get up and do this. But in this way, I was forced to do something. I wanted to continue, and I certainly took pride in accomplishing it, and every time I made a little bit of progress, it gave me an incentive and gave me a pride, and also showed me that there's a hell of a lot more that I can do, and I was determined to do that.
Roland Craig's accident was only 4 years ago. 4 years may sound like a long time to anyone else, but to Roland, it seems like only yesterday.
Every night I try to sleep, I think of that accident. I had 15 broken ribs, and my 6 vertebrae were smashed. I was in intensive care for 11 days. I was on a respirator for 10 of them days. And the doctor coming around, I remember about a month later, and he said he would never walk again. And I said, well, are you God or something, you know? I guess I couldn't accept that I couldn't walk again. And,
It's easy to understand Roland's frustration, his anger, and his hurt. For in that flash of time, this strong, aggressive man found himself the victim of a situation he was no stranger to.
I helped pack out one fellow that was dead. I had found him. And that's a really eerie feeling, too, when you come across one of your fellow workers that had blood coming out of his mouth, and he was already starting to turn blue. You know, there was 6 or 8 of us packing him out of the bush, and there wasn't a heck of a lot of talking amongst us, you know. Just felt so bad about it. So I've seen the injuries, and I've helped to pack him out, but didn't ever think that it ever happened to me.
Unless you or someone near you has been through it, unless you've actually experienced life in a wheelchair, you probably have no idea how much it changes your life. Just getting from point A to point B becomes a major undertaking. You don't just jump in the car and go. Nothing is as easy as it used to be.
It doesn't go away. You're living, trying to live with it all day long, you know, until you're sleeping. You wake up in the morning, the burning, the pain is there, and you're just getting out of bed in the morning. It's, you know, it's with you constantly. It's not like a broken leg. It heals, and it, you know, you're able to walk away again or do whatever you want. But to try and live with it 24 hours a day is about the hardest thing. I don't know whether I could even ever accept it. You know, hope they do come up with a cure for spinal cord injury. That's my only hope, I think.
The painful reality that life will never be the same is still sinking in. He's come to realize that he cannot ride his horse, Sonny, ever again. One last visit before the new owner comes to take Sonny away, and the bitter taste of life in a wheelchair becomes even harder for Roland to swallow. The speed and efficiency with which heavy machinery grinds logs into pulp, into paper, can be applied just as easily, just as brutally, to a human body. To say that heavy machinery is dangerous sounds simple-minded. It sounds like an insult to the intelligence of most workers to keep preaching that heavy machinery is dangerous. Because everybody knows it's dangerous. But if everybody knows it, why do these crippling accidents keep happening every 12 seconds?
I think primarily it's complacency about what you do, getting very comfortable with the things you do and letting your guards down.
Al Brett speaks from experience, painful personal experience. 23 years ago, he was working on a newsprint machine. As each new roll of newsprint is finished, one of the workers uses an air hose to break the paper and turn the loose end upward to wrap around another spool and start a new roll. This procedure, called a turn-up, happens in a matter of seconds, and the high-speed machinery never stops running. Sometimes when the paper breaks, there's a mess. And someone has to remove the debris, what they call broke, from between the rollers. In any machinery where two rollers run together, there's what's called a nip point, where any object, whether it be a tool or a human hand, can be suddenly and violently grabbed, pulled in, and mashed. On a newsprint machine, there are literally dozens of rollers, dozens of nip points. Near the end of the production line, where most of the paper breaks occur, there is a vertical stack of rollers called a calendar stack, which heats and presses the paper to a smooth, flat finish. And this is where Al Brett became another statistic in that grim 12-second countdown.
I was blowing the broke off of the calendar stacks with the hose, and I was in the process of moving backwards, The hose got caught on something. It snaked up, got caught in the nip point between the two rolls, and at running 2,600 feet per minute, it snapped me around and pulled me between the rollers as well. So I ended up with both arms caught between the rollers, sort of up to about my elbows. The calendar stacks are very, very hot. The figure of 400 degrees stays in my mind, but they are very, very hot, and they are like irons. When I first woke up in the recovery room, although I was told I'd lost my arms, I did not believe it because all the sensation is still there. So it felt like they may have been paralyzed or somewhere out in space, but I could still feel them. As I can today, I can still feel the nerve endings and the sensation of having fingers and that sort of thing.
Since Albrecht's accident, a new air nozzle has been designed, one that's larger and rounded so that it cannot be caught in the nip point between two rollers. Albrecht went back to school, earned a degree in sociology and psychology, and eventually returned to work for the same company. Over 30 meters of raw green wood, falling through an arc. When you make a mistake in this business, the forces you encounter are very unforgiving. High-strung steel cables that cry and break under stress. Cables that snap, crack, and cut like whips. Make a mistake here and you don't rub it out with an eraser. A massive truckload of logs, grinding brakes into blue smoke and steam, pushing the driver downhill with a gut full of jangled nerves. Every 12 seconds, someone else steps across the line. The invisible line that separates a healthy, able-bodied person from a crippling accident or death. There is no barrier, no foolproof protection, no magic, only empty space and common sense. The 12-second countdown continues. Who's next? Who among these young, healthy people thinks he is immortal? It always happens to the other guy, right? Every 12 seconds. In the time it has taken to watch this film, nearly 200 more Canadians have been seriously injured, disabled, or killed on the job. Connie Montgomery is one of the most recent victims of the 12-second countdown. She was working underneath a moving conveyor belt when it caught her hard hat and snapped her neck. And even though she's not really had much time to adjust to this new reality of her life, Connie is already showing signs of an incredible determination.
What, are we going to give up? No. With myself, I made up my mind during the accident as well. I never lost consciousness at all, and that was simply by forcing my mind to stay with it and saying, I'm not giving in. I'm not going to be killed. I'm not going to be this. I'm not going to be that. I want to live. Your life is important. It doesn't matter in what position you're in. You can't give up. Life is, it's yours. And what you do with it is you've got to fight.
Over time, most of us who have been injured on the job can reconcile the bitterness, the frustration, the anger. After all, we live in a time and in a place where government, unions, and industry can be called upon to help on the long road back. The real issue here is not the money, the $15 billion or so that Canadians will spend this year dealing with injured workers. Instead, it's the loss of time, lives that never seem long enough. There is no safe quarter in any industry, for the reality of this 12-second countdown is everywhere. It is one that 500,000 Canadians will confront this year on a very personal basis. And somewhere, amid the pain and frustration, you will hear a familiar refrain, "I just never thought it would happen to me." Don't let our story become your reality. Know your rights, exercise your privileges, and understand your responsibilities. There is no other way. Yes, we are the lucky ones. We have survived. Still, in our quiet moments, we dream about what life could have been. And we pray that you think twice about who we are and what we represent. Major funding for Every 12 Seconds was provided by Macmillan Bloedel, Noranda Forrest, Secretary of State, Workers' Compensation Board of British Columbia, Council of Forest Industries of British Columbia, VU13 Television.